Children. In today's session, we will be studying Class 12 Indian Economic Development, Chapter 1 Indian Economy on the Eve of Independence. In this chapter, we will be studying about the status of Indian economy at the time of independence. And the main objective of this chapter is to become familiar with the state of the Indian economy in 1947, the year of independence, and understand the factors that led to the underdevelopment and stagnation of the Indian economy. Dear children, when we got independence, the status of Indian economy was not good because it was totally ruled by the colonial rule. So, what were the reasons of backwardness, or you can say stagnation of the Indian economy? Now, before moving ahead, we should know what does the term stagnation means. Stagnation means when there is a very slight or negligible change in the status of economy of any country. So there is a progress, but it's a negligible thing. Now, so the topics which we are going to cover in this chapter during this session are as follows. Level of economic development under the colonial rule of Indian economy, agriculture sector situation, industrial sectors, foreign trade, demographic conditions or the changes which have taken place during the colonial period, what was the occupational structures and the changes in the development of infrastructure in the country. Now let us have a small look on the period when Britishers were ruling over us. The basic purpose of the British colonial rule over India was to complement and serve the industrialization process in Britain. Now, what does it mean? Children, when we have studied in previous classes in social science, then the Britishers, when they came to India, they came as a trader. The main purpose of coming to India was to have trade with India. The reason was that Indian handicrafts and products were in great demand in the most of the countries in the entire world due to its fine quality and handicraftness or beauty, you can see. And simultaneously, at that time in England, industrialization have started. Now, what do you mean by industrialization? Industrialization means when the goods are produced with the help of machines in large number. And when machines are used to produce the goods, which produce goods in large number, that means the raw material is also needed in huge quantity and continuously. So the Britishers from Britain, or we can say the East India Company, who was trading with India at that time, they used to use Indian raw materials or products to feed the industries running in their home country. That's why, on the basis of that, we can say that the sole aim of colonial government in India was to reduce India status only to be a supplier of the raw materials of fine quality to the Britain to be used in their industry for producing of good materials, or you can say things. And this way, they used to meet the needs of raw materials in the industries of Britain. And after goods are produced, the producer will be able to earn profit only when these goods are sold in the market, isn't it? So for that, what is required? Market. So all those goods which were producing Britain industries with the help of raw materials of fine quality imported from India at a reasonable, or you can say very cheap rate, were brought back in India to be sold in Indian market as a finished goods. And this way, the traders used to earn huge profit from the India because they were getting raw material at very cheap rate of very fine quality from the India, and after converting it into the finished goods, same goods were sold at higher rate in the Indian market. Now, colonialism, as I am using the word colonial rule, colony was made by the Britishers in India and many other parts of the country. So, what does this term colonialism means? Actually, colonialism is the policy of a nation seeking to extend or retain its authority over other people or territory. That means when any group of people or government they come to another country and there they take the authority of that country to use its people, its territory, its resources for their own purposes, it is known as colonialism. The ruling country not only has political control, but it also has determines the economic policies of the dominated country. That means the country which rules over another country as forward, or you can say as a ruler, and making that second country their colony, like Britishers. They used to rule over India, and India was called as the colony of the Britain. So these Britain or East India Company, who was ruling over India at that time on behalf of the British government, they were having completely control over India's political affairs. They used to frame economic policies of the dominated country, or that is India, for their own benefit. They were least concerned with the development of the Indian economy. Their main purpose was only to utilize Indian uh, economic policies for their country's welfare. The colonizing country seeks to benefit from the colonized country or landmass. Now, what do you mean by landmass here? It means that all the resources which are available in the colonized country, they are used by the colonial rule or ruler for their own benefit. In case of India, colonialism is one of the major factors responsible for its underdevelopment. Children, when the Britishers, or you can say the East India Company, came to India for trading at that time, India was very much developed in all spheres of trade. Its goods were in large demand in the entire world, as I have already told you. So here, with the help of this picture, you can see that these are the East India Company people who are meeting with the Indian rulers and they wanted to have trade with India. So as a trader, they came to India first and then slowly they took the advantages of the political atmosphere in the India and they utilized it for their own purposes and slowly they started settling their administration in India for their own benefit. Now, let us study with the next topic, and that is level of economic development. So, what was the level of economic development in India before the Britishers came here as a ruler? So, based on the reputation for use of the fine quality raw materials, finished products, and the high standards of craftsmanship, India was well known for its handicraft industries in the field of cotton, silk, textiles, metals, precious stone work, and many more things. And we can say that India enjoyed a worldwide market for its product. In other sense, you can say that Indian product was very much demand in the entire world during that period because of its fine quality, fine work. Now, during British rule, low level of economic development. So when the Britishers came to India, a survey was conducted which showed that according to the British economists who conducted this survey, whose name was mentioned, India's share of the world economy have declined drastically from 24.4% to 14.2% between the period of 1700 and 1930. So you can see there is a huge decline in the share of Indian trade at the world level. The economic policies implemented by the colonial government in the India, which were mainly concerned with the protection and promotion of the economic interests of their home country than India. This was main reason behind the downfall of Indian economy. So what was the reason for the fall of Indian economy or trade at the world level from 24.4% to 14.2%? The twofold policy of the British government. So what was the twofold policy of the government? First, treating India as a supplier of cheap raw material of fine quality and utilizing Indian market for selling of finished goods of Britain made in the streets. You can say Britain goods were sold in Indian market at higher. The country's growth rate during the first half of the 12th century was very less. It was less than 2%, and the per capita income of the people was only 0.5%. So you can see that when the Britishers came to India, the Indian trade, Indian economic status, and the living standard of Indians was very good. But during their period of rule, the per capita income, that means the financial status of the people was declined to a great extent, and it led to 0.5%. This shows that poverty was prevailing in India. And the colonial government was least bothered about to know about the economic development of India, that is through estimating or calculating the national income, or the financial status of the Indian people, that is the earning of the people, which is calculated with the help of per capita income. It was first calculated by Indian economists and social workers whose name was Dadabhai Banerjee in 1868, and it was found that Indian per capita people's per capita income is very low, that is 0.5%, and after that many more economists, they also conducted surveys of calculating national income of India and per capita income with the passage of the time. So here are the names, you can go through them. Now, agriculture sector. In this chapter, the first focus is to know the status of the agriculture sector in India during the colonial period. Children, you know that India is an agrarian country. Why we call it so? Because in India, most of the people, directly or indirectly, depend on agriculture for their livelihood. Around 85% of the country's population live in villages or rural areas, and their main occupation is agriculture or its allied activity. There's endless evidence, including several British and European accounts, to show the flourishing state of our agriculture in pre-British period. That means that before the British period, Indian agriculture was very much developed. Indian villages were self-sufficient. They were independent. The reason, whatever needs were there of the Indian rural people or the villagers, they were able to fulfill it from the village and its allied activities, etc. Mostly in agriculture, Indian people, they used to grow food crops. And with the help of food crops, they were able to meet their most of the needs. Now, impact of British rule over Indian agriculture. Britishers introduced a new class of landlords called zamindars who regarded land as their private property and aimed at obtaining maximum monetary gains out of it, making cultivators the actual tillers of the land mere tenants. So, when Britishers came to India, before that, most of the lands were owned individually by the villagers as farmers. They were landowners. They were having sufficient sizes of land and they were using this land for their agriculture purposes to meet their family needs. And they were able to grow sufficient food crops, which was fully utilizable to meet their yearly needs, and they were able to sell the surplus in the market also. But during the British periods, in order to collect the revenue regularly in a fixed amount, the Midari system was introduced by the Britishers. Now, who were these zamindars? The zamindars were the people who were appointed by the Britishers or British government to collect the revenue from the villagers. And these zamindars were given the power not only to collect a fixed amount of revenue, which was almost half of the produce from the villagers, and deposit in the British ruled territory. And slowly, these zamindars started becoming landlords by taking lands from the villagers when they were not able to pay the revenue on time. In this way, the actual owner of the land, that were the farmers, they were converted into the tenants of the land. That means now they have become only the tiller of the lands. They are not the owners. They are working there as a landless people. Farmers were also forced to produce cash crops to feed the industries in England. Earlier, as I told, farmers were producing cash crops. Am I correct? No. Farmers were forced to produce cash crops to feed the industries in England. Means before this period, Indian farmers were producing food crops. And when the Britishers came to India, they started forcing Indian farmers to produce cash crops to meet the needs of the industries established in England by not allowing them to produce food crops. Due to this, it ruined the self-sufficiency of the village as much of these products which were produced in the form of cash crops were sold in the market. Now, the farmers cannot produce food crops. Whatever cash crop they used to produce, they were forced to sell them in the market at the rate fixed by the British traders. The new revenue system led to the present independence. According to the zamindari systems and various revenue systems which were introduced by the Britishers, the Indian farmers were supposed to pay almost half of the food produce or agriculture produce as a revenue. So they were having very less amount left with them to meet their needs of the entire year and to grow new crops in the land. So that's where they were forced indirectly to take the loan continuously from either the traders, that was the British traders, or from the zamindars. And commercialization of agriculture means growing only those cash crops which were in great demand, which can be sold in the market. This ultimately resulted in mass poverty and problem of landless. So as the cash crops were grown forcefully from the Indian farmers, and these cash crops were sold in the market to the Indian farmers by the British traders. The Indian farmers were not having sufficient money. They were not having their own land also because it was taken by the zamindars or the rich landowners. So, in order to meet their needs, what they used to do, they used to take loan, and this way they were mostly under the back charge, and thus lead to the poverty in the country, especially in the rural areas. Now, reasons for the backwardness of agriculture sector. These are some of the same points which we have discussed. Among them, the first one is land settlement system. In zamindari system, the profits occurring out of the agriculture sector went to the zamindar instead of the cultivator. That means whatever produce was produced by the Indian farmers, that was either taken by the zamindar in the form of revenue or by the rich landowners, and the revenue which was collected by the zamindars or the rich land was much higher than the rate or the amount which they were supposed to collect in the form of revenue, because the zamindars were also forced, you can say, or asked to submit a fixed amount of revenue at a fixed period of time with the British government. And if they used to fail, their power of collecting revenue or zamindari was taken away by the British government, and it may be given to the some other rich landowners. So in order to retain their power, they used to collect higher revenue from the villages. Commercialization of agriculture, which I have already told you, it means forcing Indian farmers to grow those cash crops which can be sold in the market to be utilized in industries or which used to provide huge profit to the British. Next is lack of irrigation facilities. As we know that India was not technologically developed and there was not much facilities of irrigation available to the farmers as they were poor also. That's why the farmers were not able to grow good crops. Low level of technology due to lack of knowledge, means and incentives for modernization. Most of the agricultural activities were traditional activities or ways of doing farming. Farmers were poor, they were not having their own irrigation facilities like you can say well or any other facilities were not available to them for agriculture irrigation. And the zamindars who were the actual owners at that time or the rich landlords who used to force these landless farmers to work on their land. They were least concerned for the development of agricultural irrigation facilities. They were interested only in profit as they were living in cities. They were not living mostly in the rural areas and they were self-sufficient. They are having sufficient financial aids to meet their needs. So that's why they were not bothered about to make policies so that they can improve the fertility of the soil of their land or improve the irrigation facilities. Now, commercialization of agriculture. Commercialization of agriculture are prominent around 1860-80. This brought about a change from cultivation for home consumption to cultivation for the market. That means earlier when Indian farmers, they used to grow crops, they used to grow which crop? Food crop. And the main purpose of growing this food crop was to meet their own personal or family needs. And only few surplus amount which they were having, of food crop they used to sell within the village and meet their other needs. But now the situation has changed. Due to commercialization, farmers are growing cash crops, which is grown mostly to be sold in the market so that money can be earned. And through this money, now the Indian farmers or villagers, they have to purchase their food necessity items as well as other needs to be fulfilled. Many commercial crops like cotton, jute, tea, tobacco were introduced to meet the demand of factories running in Britain. This we have mostly done most of the time, that most of the cash crops were only utilized for meeting the needs of the factories, which were owned by the Britishers. And forced commercialization means that if Indian farmers they were not willing to grow cash crops, then by providing loan or indirect pressure, they were forced to grow cash crops only, lead to shortage of food crops. As I have already told, now farmers are growing which crop? Cash crop. And they are not allowed to grow food crops. So that's why it led to the shortage of food crops availability in villages. Cash transactions became the basis of exchange of largely by replacing the system of barter system. Earlier, most of the trade was done in the form of barter system, which is also known as commodity to commodity system. And this one good is exchanged with another good in order to meet the needs. There is no involvement of money as medium of exchange. But during the British rule, they started utilizing money as a medium of exchange, and the cash crops which were produced in villages that was purchased by the British traders. And this way, the cash was introduced in the market in the form of medium exchange. So it has affected the barter system also. So in today's class, we can see that at the end, these are the various cash crops which were grown in India, like cotton, you can see indigo, silk, tea, and many. So in today's class, only this much. In next class, we will study with the industrial sector. Thank you. Thank you very much.